let's save. I've got a minus sign there, so I need to add. Okay, so let's save and refresh. So now if we don't place any text there, I click on the reading button, we've got the error message. Okay. If we refresh and write enough text there and click, we don't see the error message. Okay, now let's write the code to execute if we have enough text. So first of all, we are going to move to the reading mode. So to do this, we're gonna use a variable reading that's going to be a boolean. So let's declare this variable at the beginning. Let's call it reading, and initially it's going to be set to false as we're not reading when we load the app. So now as we're starting reading, we are going to move to the reading mode by setting this variable reading to true. Okay, then we are going to show the controls. Okay, we're going to show the sliders. Also, we're going to show the new and pause and resume buttons. Okay, and also the reading box. And we're going to hide the text inputs and the start reading button. So let's go ahead and do all this. So we're going to hide the start button, the error message, the user input, and we're going to show the new button, the pause, resume, and the sliders which are inside the controls div. Okay, so let's access each of these elements using its ID. So the start button, we're going to hide it. We're going to hide the error message. Also, we're going to hide the user input. And we're going to show the new button, the pause button. Okay. Well, at the beginning, we're not going to show the resume button, actually, only the pause button. And we're going to show the sliders, which are inside the div of ID controls. Let's just double check. Okay, that's controls. Okay, fine. Now let's save and try this. So if we have enough text, now we can see our controls there. Okay, and we can see the new and pause buttons. All right. Now we will need to set the maximum of our progress slider using the number of words. Okay, as we have said earlier in the logic. So we're gonna set the progress slider max. So first of all, we're gonna access the slider using its ID, which is progress slider. And to change the max attributes, we're going to use the attributes method, which will take two parameters. So the first one is a string where we place the attributes we would like to change, and the second parameter is going to be the value. So we're looking here at the number of words minus 1, okay, as we covered earlier. So the number of words is the input length, and then minus 1. Okay. And then we're going to need to start showing these words, and we know that we're going to use the index okay, to get these words from the array. And we say that we're going to show every time the word or the element of index counter. So we're going to use our counter. To start, we're going to set the counter to 0. So let's define a variable counter. And we're going to set it to 0. So start the counter at 0. All right. And then we're going to show the first word. Okay. So we haven't shown the reading box there, but we're going to show it here. Okay. So we're going to show the reading box or the result, okay, with the first word. So first, let's show the box by using the ID of the box, which is results in our case. Let's just double check. Okay, that's results. And we're going to use the show method to show it. So that's going to be an empty box if we show it like that. Now we need to show the first word inside the results div. So we're going to change the text of this div using the first word. So the first word is going to be the element inside our array, okay, of index 0 or index counter. Okay, so we're going to go to the array and then get the elements of index counter. All right. So now let's save and try this. Okay, and now we can see our first word there. Okay. All right. Now we are going to start reading. Okay, and as we said earlier, to read, we are going to show one word at a time. Okay, and we're gonna use a timing event here because we are doing a loop that will execute a code every 200 milliseconds initially. Okay, so we're going to be using the set interval function. Okay, so here we're starting reading from the first word. So to use the set interval function, as we've done in previous projects, we're going to define a variable where we store the output of the set interval function, and let's call this variable action. So we're going to set the action variable to the output of this function, which takes two parameters. Okay, so the first parameter is going to be a function. So I'm going to call this function read, and then we can define this function later on in the function section. And the second parameter is the number of milliseconds for our frequency. Okay, so we're going to start with 200 milliseconds. Otherwise, we can, okay, we just need a number there. So 200 milliseconds. We can use a variable frequency if we want, because this is going to change later. So let's define this variable at the beginning. Okay. And now let's create our reading function. So we're going to go to the functions section. Okay, so let's create a function there. Okay, so first of all, we are going to check if we hit the last word. Okay, so to check that, we are going to check the value of our counter. So hitting the last word means that the counter is going to hit the last number, which is the index length of the array minus 1. So if our array has got 10 elements, okay, the last element is going to have an index 9. Okay, so if the counter is the last index, which is the length of our array minus 1, so this means that we're hitting the final word. Okay, so that means last word. Now we're going to do a few things. So first of all, we're going to stop reading. So we know that we initiated the reading using this line of code, or using the set interval function. So to stop the set interval function, we're going to use the clear interval function that we apply to the action variable. Okay, so clear interval applied to the action variable. So that's the first thing. Okay, and now as we stopped reading, our reading mode is going to become false. Okay, so now we're going to move to the non-reading mode by setting the reading variable to false. Okay, move to non-reading mode. Okay. Also, once we hit the last word, you will notice that we keep only the new button, okay? And the other button, which is the pause button, is going to disappear. Okay, so let's hide this button. All right. Now, if we haven't hit the last word yet, we are going to show one word. Okay, and to show that word, we are going to use the index of the word inside the array. Okay, so we're going to have an else statement. Okay, so if we don't change our counter, we're going to be showing all the time the same word. So first, let's increase our counter by 1. Okay. And then let's show our word. So we're going to access the reading box, which is the elements of ID results. And then we're going to change the text of the element using the index counter. Okay, so we're going to access the array, go to the array, and then we're looking at the element of index counter. All right. Now we're going to do something else. We're going to look at our progress slider. Okay, so we need to change the value of the slider. So as we said earlier, the value of this slider corresponds to the value of the counter. So you're going to access the slider and set its value to the value of the counter. Okay, so we are changing the progress slider value. Also, once we change the value of a slider in jQuery Mobile, we need to refresh that slider. So we're going to refresh it as well. So to change the value, we're going to access the slider using its ID. Okay. And then we're going to change the value using the val method to the value of the counter. Okay, and after that, we are going to refresh the slider by using the slider method, which will take one parameter here to refresh, okay, which is refresh, like this. If you want to combine both these lines in one line, you can do that. So at the end of this line, you can just add dot slider refresh. Okay, rather than writing 2 lines. Okay, this is completely fine to do it like this. Okay, so let's save. And let's have a look. So if we paste some text there, okay, and click on the Start Reading button. Okay, so we can see that we are reading 1 word at a time, but it looks like the speed is too high. So let's check our frequency. Okay, so we haven't defined any value for the frequency, so let's set this to 200 milliseconds initially. So let's save. And let's try again. Okay, so we can see that it is working. So if we change that to 1000 milliseconds, so you're going to read 1 word every second. Okay, perfect, it's working. All right, now we need to calculate the progress percentage, okay, and change the value of our span. So let's add a comment there. So change the text of percentage. Okay, so the span had an ID. Let's have a quick look. That's our span, and the ID is percentage. Okay. So we're going to access the span using its ID, which is percentage. And we're going to change its text. Okay. So as we said earlier, the value of the progress percentage is going to be calculated by taking the counter value and dividing that by the number of words inside our array minus 1, and then we multiply everything by 100. So let's do this. So that's going to be counter divided by the length of the array minus 1, okay, and then we multiply by 100. So let's save and try this. Okay, you can see that it's working. All right, so we want to keep only 2 digits there. Okay, so we want an integer. So we can place the whole formula inside math floor. Okay. So let's do this and save. Okay, let's try again. Okay, and that's better. All right. So in the next video, we're going to write code corresponding to clicking on the buttons resume, new, and pause.